jumping right back into the show and into another pretty interesting topic that I'm sort of starting to stack up here on the show. More international game locations that could become hosts for regular season games in the near future. After the NFL owners really passed this ruling in December that made the NFL jump up from the five international games that they have been planning out throughout the regular season to about 7 to 9 that would be potentially coming in the years after this season. That's really where all of this comes from. Why is there such an increase in international games? Why is the NFL looking into so many different places to host these games? Well, it is because of this ruling that they're going to lead to potentially look for more places, not to just have four games in London and then maybe another three or four in Germany, where it has become the more comfortable location for the NFL. And the current CBA also allows only up to 10 international games to be scheduled for the NFL. So I don't think it'll go up to 10. We're probably going to see 8 to 7 as an increase out. According to the New York Times, the NFL is considering a game for the first time ever in the Middle East. Abu Dhabi is probably the most likely one at this moment. The NFL has never played there, obviously, nor preseason game, nor any game of any magnitude in the Middle East. But I think this is interesting, and it is a little surprising if, obviously because the NFL has never played there, but just from the fact that the Middle East and Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, all these places are getting a lot of big name sporting events to, be hosted there. Abu Dhabi's been involved in hosting some North American sports like the NBA. Some preseason games have been held there. I think it was 2 years ago when the Bucks played there. The FIFA World Cup was also held there, and WWE has had their pay-per-views as well in Saudi Arabia. Not in Saudi Arabia yet, not Abu Dhabi specifically, but more events are getting sent over there to the Middle East for a number of reasons, for a lot of revenue reasons, and also just off of the top of my head, I know some soccer games are being played over there. I know Spain does their domestic tournament there, their Super Cup, the Spanish Super Cup there, a mini tournament where they travel from Spain and have four teams play over there. So it seems like more sports are getting involved in this. More sports are having at least one or two games or a couple of events over there in the Middle East, and the NFL is no stranger to this, no stranger to following trends and hopping on what's new, what does everybody have their eyes on. So this doesn't really surprise me, but it is just weird to say that we could have a game in Abu Dhabi potentially in the near future, but it is just being looked at right now potentially for the NFL. And also, reports around the NFL say games in Italy could be considered, or in Japan as well. Italy has, again, never hosted an NFL game before. This would be the first time the NFL hosts, or the NFL travels to Italy for an NFL game, a regular season game. There was a weird period that I wasn't aware of, or just an unfamiliar period, I should say, a while ago, called the American Bowl era. If most of you or some of you are familiar with it, where the NFL had international games during an extended period of time, where they would have some preseason games abroad to try and expand their game. This was the first attempt of the NFL trying to bring the NFL to different locations. Now it seems more common, but before it was done before to sort of, set the roots in some of these places. And some of the places that they went to was in Tokyo. Tokyo hosted an NFL game 12 times, 12 preseason games technically, but they were host to some NFL level of games there in the Tokyo Dome or in the Osaka Dome as well. Those are the two main candidates if the NFL had games in Japan as well. So if you look at all the facts, Italy, Japan, the Middle East, and you add it on to other locations that have been mentioned as well around the NFL having these games in different countries, I listed them all out as possible locations for international games, potentially as soon as 2025, and you have some that are pretty much confirmed. I know the Madrid, Spain one at the Santiago Bernabeu is pretty much going to happen in 2025. South America, if it all goes well in Brazil down there, I don't see a reason why they wouldn't maybe bring it to another country like Argentina or maybe a different part of Brazil or something like that. That could be another candidate. Mexico City has been rumored with again hosting another game. There's a lot of NFL fans there. I know, oddly enough, the Steelers have a pretty big fan base down there, so they're rumored to be involved. Obviously, you have London as well as a continual host of NFL games. I'm sure they'd want, again, to host another one next season, in Germany, in Frankfurt, or in Munich, like they're having games in this year. I'm sure they're still reliable options for the NFL to have games there. Then you have Paris, France, which I touched on. I want to say in the YouTube shorts that I did before, they're also rumored to having the NFL be looking at some locations in that country. Ireland as well, in Dublin. They actually hosted an American Bowl era game there back in 1997. So it's been a while. Since they last hosted, but there has been an NFL game there before. Then I know I've talked about Australia as potentially hosting one. This one could be the furthest from happening just because of the time difference. Would be very tricky and very interesting to see how the NFL ever plans a game in Australia because of the I think it's 13 or 12 hour time difference, something like that in Australia, something crazy to plan an NFL game there. Also, Italy, like I mentioned, and Tokyo, Japan. A lot of countries listed there. I want to say I named like 10 to 9 places there on that list, on some of the places where they could have it. And, that sort of begs the question now, could we see an international game potentially in 8 to 9 different places in 2025? I think it would be interesting as well. Also with this, just sorry, was a technical issue here. But anyway, like I mentioned, this would be interesting just from the simple fact that I listed so many options that the NFL has now with these international games, and it is crazy to think of now where we are at this point in 2024, talking about these international games where a few years ago it was really only limited to maybe Mexico City and London and Germany, and then that was pretty much it. I don't think anybody really could have imagined how many more options now there is to potentially have some of these games at. And it is great. I'm a fan of it. I like the NFL expanding, but in terms of the question, could we see international games in all these different places, just one in each country that I listed? Probably unlikely. I think it would just be too much travel for the first year of this new ruling that the NFL passed. Like I mentioned, they passed this back in December, so there is going to be an uptick in international games. You don't know how many exactly yet, but from the 5 that we currently have right now, I think that probably jumps up to probably 7 or 8, like I mentioned before. And to give a ratio right now, currently it is 3 countries and 5 games. That's sort of the ratio that the NFL has going right now in Brazil, the UK, and in Germany. I would probably say it would go up to 5 countries based on all the rumors that I believe are the most likely to happen. So I mentioned Spain as probably being the most likely. That's another country, make it 4. And then Mexico, I probably think, is a good candidate to jump into that list. So in total, I would probably say it's Mexico, Spain, the UK, England, and probably that's probably about it. 5 different countries. And then in terms of games, 7 games I could potentially see, maybe 2 in the UK, maybe 2 in Germany, 1 in Spain, 1 in Mexico, and then you have another one as well. So that's probably where it all stands right now with the NFL and all these international games. They're definitely playing it by ear. I know this is a weird topic and a just weird landscape right now because they have so many options so quickly, but I would be interested to see where it all goes from here because the NFL, I feel like they want to do this, but it would be interesting how they essentially do this based on the travel, the logistics of it all, and the scheduling of it all. It would be something to see, but I'm looking forward to it. I have another comment here from, again, Eric Rodriguez. Maybe in a European division, the Jacksonville Jaguars had about a handful of games across sea last season. Yeah, the Jacksonville Jaguars are probably the UK's team, are probably the home team in London, so that wouldn't be something I don't think the NFL would be opposed to. I'm sure. I mean, it seems like they're open to everything right now. A European division. I think a sole European division would be hard to do, just based on me on my thinking. The NFL could think differently, but maybe just a series of teams that make it easier for them to travel over there, if that makes sense. The Jacksonville Jaguars have been one that is always seems to be going over there. So if you have a couple of those teams that always play internationally, I think would be interesting to see. Like I mentioned, the Steelers are pretty big in Mexico, so if you always have the Steelers at least once a year playing there, I don't think that would be a bad idea. And then still just mixing in some teams here or there. I know part of the new ruling is that each NFL team has to host one international game now, one every 4 years instead of one every 8 years. So they have to take that into account. But I'm not opposed to it. A European division having some teams specifically play in some locations, I would definitely not be opposed to it. You'd have to see what the fan reaction is to that, but I don't think that's the worst of idea. In now a new landscape for the NFL where they find themselves in now, good, and it's also a little bit uncertain, a little bit uneasy for some fans that might have to get up a little bit earlier to watch some of their teams play. But all in all, I think this is just big picture thinking. I think this is a good thing for the NFL, growing it more and more, getting it up there to compete with some of the bigger worldwide sports like tennis, like soccer. I think getting it up there would definitely be a good thing for all these people across the globe to see football, because it is something definitely to watch. It's a big deal, obviously, in America. I think it would definitely get a lot of fans elsewhere, and how passionate people are about sports in certain areas as well. I think this could all just turn out very well for the NFL. But in saying that, we will move on with the rest of the show. Two more topics to talk about here. A potential bigger role for Eagles second-year player Jalen Carter in that defense, how he could probably be their best pass rusher in 2024, and why I believe that, and why maybe their new defensive coordinator Vic Fangio also believes it, plus an update on Deshaun Watson's shoulder rehab, how's that going, and how important this offseason is for Deshaun Watson is all coming up in just a few seconds. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back.